How you doing? It's Brian here, another video. Today I want to talk about the value of cohesion in SEO, and not just in a superficial way to say, yeah, it's nice when it fits in with the rest of your marketing so the messaging will be stronger. Sure. But I want to come at it not from the stance of here are tips to do it better, but just from some practical experience on my part of if you have a list of rules for yourself over time of like, these are things that reliably lead to bad projects or bad outcomes. And then conversely, if I avoid those things, the likelihood is way higher I'm going to work on a better project. Where do some of those come from? What are the bad scenarios that you find yourself in that kind of end up making that list? One of the things is I think businesses need to look at SEO as a long-term thing, not simply because SEO doesn't work overnight, and it's not like we're going to do some stuff today and magically rank tomorrow, and not simply because it will take us a while to get the rankings. But with a lot of folks I've worked with, it strikes me that probably one of the bad assumptions that get made are once we win at SEO, then we're done. I even had a client that I worked with some months ago that I had recommended when we started, look, we need to at least give this 6 months. And they were like, I want to do 3 months. And in my mind, I was sort of like, why? Where did you pull 3 months, out of your head? Is it just a budget thing? Do you only want to pay for 3 months? It kind of seemed like that was the issue. Reluctantly, I started the project anyway, even though they insisted upon 3 months, and I knew that that was not realistic because I tried to go into it with enough swagger to look at it like, well, if I can show them enough results in certain things with the right expectations in 90 days, then I can get them to keep going to 6 months and beyond. And unfortunately, I couldn't because it became clear to me when we neared the end of that mark that in their seeing of things, the results were not going to dictate whether we kept going further. In other words, they weren't saying, oh, if I see good enough results, then we'll keep paying for this. In their head, it was, no, I'm doing 3 months and then we're done. That should be all that is needed for SEO, and then I'm not investing in this anymore. And obviously, in retrospect, there were some different things I could have and should have done in the beginning for expectations, and maybe just shouldn't have even entered that business partnership in the first place. Not that it ended terribly or anything, but it even made me think of this as an example to say in future conversations, because in that case, they had a social media team dedicated that was a big part of their marketing, and that was ongoing. And it occurred to me, well, you wouldn't say for your social media, well, if we knock it out of the park on Facebook and Instagram and stuff in the next couple of months, then we're done. We've gone viral with something. We're going to hang it up now, and we're not going to do it anymore. Obviously, no one would do that. But for some reason, some businesses think that about SEO, where it's like, if we do a certain task list and we feel good about what we've accomplished and we've won, then SEO is finished, and we're just done with it. That doesn't make any sense. Even if you achieved some of your goals in a certain span of time, whatever threshold you've given it, 3 months, 6 months, something. One, you can always develop more goals. There's more searches being done that haven't been done before every day, and things are always changing with how things are ranked, what kinds of things end up getting ranked. And so your work is ongoing with that. There's always more opportunity. The clients that I've worked with for 5 and 6 plus years, at once, we don't run out of things to do in SEO because you just end up in a situation where you would say, yeah, we won at these huge clusters of keywords and we got a certain amount of traffic and business from it, and we can leverage all of that clout that we have accumulated over time to now go after these things. And when we win at those, awesome, we can build out in some other way. Maybe that's widening the geographic areas that the site ranks in. Maybe it's just going after more and more difficult keywords and topics and things, you name it. So there's always more to do. And second, I believe his name is Michael Foley on LinkedIn, made an excellent point the other day where he basically said, even to maintain rankings requires continuously doing SEO. And that's a great point because, as he said, it's not like if you overtake several of your competitors for difficult keywords and now you rank number 1 or in the top 5. It's not like they're going to see that happened and say, well, darn, it was a nice run that, we were in the lead. I guess we're just not in the lead anymore. No one's going to say that. What's going to happen is they're going to notice that you rank better now, and they're going to start stepping up their game and saying, okay, well, what can we do to fix that and overcome it? And so now, if you have any hope of maintaining this lead that you have, you need to be continuously doing things to keep up with whatever it is that they're going to do over the next couple of months, or else you'll probably see what often happens, which is you move into certain competitive ranking positions and you rest on your laurels, and then a couple months later you drop way out of it and somebody else is back on top again. And so for that reason also, you can see where it's short-sighted and sort of silly to look at SEO as this, we're just going to do it for a little bit and we're going to stop. There's also a saying that I heard years ago in business and I think holds a lot of weight here. It went something along the lines of nothing is expensive if it works. And obviously in marketing and advertising, you can understand that as something might cost $1,000, $3,000 a month. That can sound like a lot of money, but if it's making you well in excess of that, who cares? It's totally paying for itself and then some. Well, it's no longer expensive. It's only expensive if you pay the money and nothing comes of it. Well, then now it feels difficult. And with that attitude, I think you can challenge some of the viewpoints like I had with that one client where they just arbitrarily say, we're doing this for 90 days because we've decided based on nothing that that's how long SEO should take. And you could challenge that by saying, if you see that it's working, why would you turn that valve off? Why wouldn't you just put money into that forever, for as long as that works? Especially when, ironically, those same companies might be funneling money continuously into social media, whether in the short term that has generated anything or not. But I think it's clearer to most people that social media is also a branding tool. And so it's clearer for a business owner to acknowledge, even if it's not leading to hard phone calls every month, it's still worth it for us to show up on social channels and maintain our following so that we sort of maintain our quote-unquote celebrity status or, our brand image or whatever you want to think of it as. A lot of business owners don't think of SEO as doing the same thing, but it certainly can be and should be a part of that as well. It's not simply ranking for money words that are going to lead to phone calls and yay, money. It's also ranking for things that are relevant and related to your services, your brand, etc., just so that you're showing up regularly, so that the kind of people who are interested in things that you offer keep seeing your name when they do those kinds of searches. Maybe when they ask questions, when they're not ready to buy yet, they again keep seeing your name as a prominent place to get answers and to get stuff. And that just builds this sense of, that brand is trustworthy. And when I eventually am ready to buy, those guys might be people that I'm going to call. That's valuable. And you have to, I think that requires the long-term view in SEO as well, because obviously using it for that reason, you can't be looking at it like as much like, well, this month, how much money did SEO make us? Well, in a big picture sense, how much is it worth to you for your brand image to be strong and for you to be out there in front of people all the time? I don't know. That's a little nebulous sometimes. In the same way that you would say of social media, say we're doing a good job on Instagram and we have a ton of followers and people love our content and they follow us and we have great brand recognition. What is that worth? That's not always easy to quantify, but you know that it's valuable. You know that it's worth a lot. To shift gear a moment, the other aspect of cohesion that's really important, not just in this big picture sense with SEO, is ideally you need to have cohesion with the people doing all of the marketing for a business. The best accounts that I've ever worked on, and I say best not just in terms of my enjoyment in the project, but also sheerly in terms of results and output, was when I was working with a company that had a dedicated social media team, and the social media team was excited to be working with me. And each month we had a lot of discussion about, I'd be like, well, here's what I would like to target with keywords. Here is blog posts and other page material that I'm thinking of auditing or writing. What are you guys thinking? And we could come up with like, oh, good, well, you could do these things on Facebook, and then when I publish these blogs, you could use it in these ways and time it to these points of the month. Or sometimes it would go the other direction where they would say, we're going to be doing a big campaign about it's something something month, or whatever it is, and they're going to have a content focus on social, and I can make the SEO mirror that a bit, and they supported each other. The cumulative effect of that was very powerful and massive growth for that company over the year that we all worked together. And I've seen the other end of that many times, unfortunately, which is where all of these groups want to operate in isolation, where they're sort of saying, you're just the writer. You're the SEO guy. I don't want to hear from you about design. I'm the designer. I'll decide what pages look like or what the nav looks like or etc. You just stay in your lane. And the social team doesn't want to know anything about the web design and the blah, blah, blah. They're just going to do Instagram and photos, and if we're lucky, maybe there'll be some crossover between some image the designer used on a page and Facebook or something, and maybe one of my blog images could somewhere match something, but we'll see. Saying it out loud, it's obvious why that's bad, but I think it ends up happening more often than people think because it's not as obvious that that's what's going on all the time. And sometimes it's an ego thing where a designer wants to feel like they're the one managing the project, they're in control, and if the SEO guy makes a suggestion like, hey, I think our nav is getting a little crowded, there's too many top-level choices, I think that's going to be overwhelming to people, why don't we simplify it and kind of funnel them down into just these couple of things that from the SEO standpoint and the content standpoint, we've already sort of refined anyway. If a developer is focused on winning, and you raise that kind of point to them, they might be like, good point. If they're not, they might be like, shut up, SEO guy. I'm the designer. I'll figure that out. And then you wind up in scenarios where the page isn't built with conversion in mind, or it's not built to suit the content of what the SEO is trying to accomplish on that page, or you get a messy navigation, or. And then you get in scenarios where it's tough because if some of those things work against conversions and phone calls on the site, then you end up where the client is paid for X number of months and might be saying, I'm disappointed in the number of phone calls I'm getting, and I don't feel like what I'm paying all of you people is working. And then they're looking for somebody to blame. Maybe they're saying, I want to cut some of my expenditures, so who is most to blame? Who's not working here? And then everybody will be pointing at each other. And as the SEO guy, I've learned the hard way many times, it's too late at that point to start pointing out the things that you noticed earlier, because it will just sound like a cheap, I'm passing the buck to try to get myself out of trouble. It might have been true for 4 months that the navigation was terrible and that was damaging the experience, and the homepage was overly cluttered and poorly designed. And maybe the SEO guy noticed that but didn't speak up enough or didn't make that known. If you bring that up at the end when the client is like, the SEO is not working, it's not leading to phone calls, and if only then you're like, well, the design and all this other stuff, you just sound like you're making up excuses, even if that's probably what's actually going on in that scenario. Not always. I mean, sometimes the SEO legitimately just doesn't work like we hoped. And that's why I've said to a lot of people I've collaborated with, and I say it to folks that I'm about to work with as well, when I do SEO strategy for a business, I need to drive. That's usually the wording that I use. And what I mean by that is, look, it's not like I am closed to any outside feedback or that no one can have input. I want a client to have input on their own site and the content we create. I'm going to lean on them for their expertise and their knowledge about things that they do in their business. But when it comes to positioning the article, positioning the content, making certain decisions that we're doing for SEO, for my part, I'm like, I need to be the one steering the ship on like how precisely we're going to do that. And I will take input from the client, but like I would like to, as much as possible, have the final say on how that works. And if you're not okay with that, we don't have to work together. And I've gotten to a point in my career where I'm okay knowing that occasionally that means losing out on a project. But when I collaborate with people, whether it's graphic designers or social media people or web developers, I often say the same thing. I know we're all working collaboratively on this thing, and I will, as much as I can, respect your dominion, on development or whatever your thing is, but I need to drive when it comes to the SEO strategy, because if I don't, we end up in scenarios like the client just decides every month, yeah, I would like to now do a page about blah, blah, blah. And then you look at it and you're thinking, why? Maybe there's a good answer to that, and that's fine. Like, you ask it not to be a jerk about it, but you're thinking why in terms of, look, client, if you have an intelligent answer to why, that's great, and I'll hear it. But sometimes clients are just, it would be nice because of reasons to also have a page that talks about this thing. But the reality is you're like, there's no search volume to that. It doesn't fit into the general content strategy that we've been building. It doesn't reinforce other things that we've made. It's not going to meaningfully move the needle on stuff that we're trying to rank for now. And it might not even be content that is that persuasive for sales, so that we could even say, well, we're leveraging traffic gained elsewhere on the site, and then just this is now how we execute conversion. If it fails on all of those things, then it's just busy work. And some folks that I've been colleagues with in the industry have the rationale of, who cares? If the client is willing to pay you that month to do work and you do a good job of the thing they wanted, then they're happy, then who cares? And I guess there's something to that. I just find myself at this point in my career in a place where I would say no, because at some point you're going to hold me accountable. At some point you're going to start looking at how many months we've been working together, how much money you've paid me, and how much money you think that I might have made you. And if I say yes to too many things that deep down I know are not going to help us, or I'm confused about how they help us, or I'm not very clear on what the benefit is going to be, then I don't feel good about it. Then when you ultimately come to me and say, how come stuff isn't working like we hoped, again, it will be too late for me to then say, well, the last couple of things that you suggested that we published didn't really fit into any kind of strategy. Well, now it just sounds like I'm passing the blame again. And in this case, blaming the client. Well, no client is going to respond well to the SEO guy blaming them for the SEO not working. That just sounds like the SEO guy is a bad SEO guy and passing the buck. And so as that person in this scenario, I feel like you have an obligation to say, I have to insist that we spend our time on things that are good for the SEO as far as I feel that it is, because I, at the end of the day, am the one being graded on this. And if I'm being graded on it, then I have to be able to put my stamp of approval on it. I can't be waylaid with busy work that doesn't move the needle for months and months on end. Plus, if you're a professional who wants to look at it like I'm trying to build myself professionally, whether you look at it as a formal portfolio or not, you just want to say about yourself, I'm a person that each project I work on, I want to be bettering me and bettering where I'm going in business. Well, then with that in mind, if for no other reason, then you can't be tethered to projects that are going nowhere and people are just saying to do stuff for no reason, and none of the departments are really like working cohesively together toward anything. Because then you as a professional have to ask yourself, where am I going with this account, and what is this account doing for me professionally? How is it going to push anything forward? Or is it just kind of spinning our wheels and destined to be a bad scenario eventually, where I get fired, somebody else gets fired, somebody's not happy, and then other than some money for some span of time, what good was this? And I'm at a point in my career where the answer is it's not any good. I'm just not interested in that anymore. Even when I'm in a month where I might have shed some clients and I need the cash, I'm reluctant to make too many decisions in business based on, well, I need some money, because that kind of short-term pursuit leads to, you do that too many times, you get yourself in a pretty bad way. So anyway, that was Brian rambling for a while on this topic, but I hope it's helpful, because legit, acknowledging these kinds of things for me has helped me a ton in business. And when I follow my own rules on this, it really does make for a quieter, much more seamless operation month to month with clients that I'm working with. And like I said in the beginning of the video, quite often when I find myself in a situation where I'm frustrated or I'm like, what is going on with this account? Why is there such a disconnect between me and the client, or me and somebody else involved? Sure enough, if I take a look at the situation, I'll realize, oh, I've learned this before. I've been in this bad spot before. I've made myself sort of a personal rule on this in the past, and I've made an exception here, and I'm regretting it. Very rarely at this point in how many years I've been doing this, am I in a bad situation that is totally novel and I'm like, wow, I've never encountered this before. I couldn't have seen this coming. Most of the time it's wagging a finger at myself saying, you've done this before, you know where this leads. Why did you put yourself here again? And so because that's demonstrably helped me enough in that way, I hoped that passing on some of those kind of thoughts and experiences would be helpful for you guys. So let me know in the comments if I can explain anything better, or if you've had similar experiences from maybe a different standpoint. Are you a developer? Are you a designer? Are you a social media content manager? I'd love to hear from you on your thoughts of cohesion as well, especially if you've worked with SEO professionals like myself, what your view, your angle of this is as well. Otherwise, guys, catch you in the next one.